what type of fragrance is best? And by type, I'm talking about concentration. So you have the eau de cologne, eau de parfum, eau de toilette, the extrait, the extracts. Which one is the best? Is there one that is the best, or are all they basically the same? So, in short, it's not exactly a cut and dry sort of thing when it comes to these concentrations, if one is better than the other. It really depends on the type of fragrance you're dealing with. So, I'm going to start with something that is considered the weakest in terms of concentration, which is eau de cologne, or just cologne. So, cologne is, in terms of perfume oil concentration, we're talking like 2.5% perfume oil concentration. So pretty weak versus, say, an extract, which can be up to 20, sometimes more. And then the rest is usually alcohol to spread out that oil and make sure it smells as it should smell. So starting with eau de cologne, usually these fragrances are relatively weak in terms of longevity. Sometimes they come in splash bottles because you need to put on quite a lot for the smell to actually stick around. Now, even though in general eau de colognes can be quite weak, this is not always the case. And the example I always bring up is Taboo by Dana, because this is a very, very old fragrance. It came out in, I think, 1932 or 1933. This is a very, very strong, spicy, smoky, incensey type of fragrance for women, and even though it is an eau de cologne, it is extremely strong. Extremely. I would compare it to some extract versions of certain other fragrances, but despite being a cologne, despite having that weak perfume oil concentration, it has really good longevity. It's one of those fragrances that if you put too much on at first, you're going to get a headache just because it's so intense. I rarely use it. I like spicy and musky fragrances, but even that is even too strong for me sometimes. So I don't wear it too often. But again, when you do wear it, you don't need to put on a lot because it's just so strong on its own. And that's mainly because of the notes. So if you had an eau de cologne that had notes of maybe some citrus, some green notes, some ocean notes, that would probably have terrible longevity and would not last very long. But because Dana's Taboo is all spices and incense and smoke and musk, these notes by themselves are very, very strong, which gives them more longevity naturally, even though it is, you're still dealing with an eau de cologne. So the notes themselves have a big part in the longevity and the performance and the general smell, obviously, of a perfume, even despite the concentration. So for that example, the concentration alone is not the only thing you should be looking at in a fragrance. Now, even though in certain instances it can make a big difference. Now, moving on to the next step up from eau de cologne is eau de toilette, which has about 5% perfume oil, a little bit stronger. Kind of in the same instance here, where usually if you're dealing with a lighter type of fragrance in terms of the notes, you have some citrus, you have some linen notes, very light. An eau de toilette also will not last very long. I would say as an example, light blue from Dolce & Gabbana, the standard light blue. Very nice, light eau de toilette. It doesn't last very long. It smells nice, but it doesn't last very long. Now, there's different versions of a particular scent. If you go up to the eau de parfum, which is usually 8 to 10 ish in terms of perfume oil concentration, you're getting a little bit more longevity, a little bit better performance, overall projection, things like that. But again, I'm going to say it again, not always. It still depends on what notes are involved. Because I've smelled fragrances in the past where, maybe it's an eau de parfum or something that has a very high concentration, But because the notes themselves are light, you know, citrusy and ocean-esque, that sort of thing, even the high concentration doesn't help the fact that it's not going to last very long because the notes are just too light. But, you know, sometimes it's designed to be like that. Sometimes people want a very light, subtle, more intimate type of fragrance versus other people who might want, you know, a beast mode type of fragrance. They want super projection, super scent trail, all that. So again, it really depends on what you want out of your fragrance, and all that. Now the extracts, the extraits, and there's not too many extracts in general. Some designer brands or niche brands, they might come out with an extract of one of their more popular fragrance options. Like I always think of Shalimar from Guerlain. They have a more expensive, more concentrated extract version of their fragrance. Now, again, extracts are not always going to be so much stronger than maybe just a more typical heavy type of fragrance, but sometimes they can be pretty strong because they have a really high concentration of perfume oil. Like, you know, the extract version of Shalimar obviously is a very, very strong fragrance, but you don't always need to go for the extract version of a fragrance if you want a strong fragrance. You could just go for an option that has just heavy notes in general if you want to go for something more intense. Plus, extracts can be quite expensive because they have more of that perfume oil, which is basically what you're paying for. But in general, when comparing different concentrations, it's not necessarily that one is better than the other. It's just mainly that it really depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for something really light or really heavy or, you know, really long lasting or more subtle, and also the price, because the more perfume oil that's in a fragrance is going to be more expensive, which is why the extracts are usually very, very expensive. And also why eau de parfum is usually more expensive than eau de toilette. Now, again, because one is not better than the other, it really pays off to try these different concentrations for yourself, and see which one you seem to like better, or which type of fragrances with the notes. Basically just do some experimentation and see what's what. But that's pretty much all I have to say in terms of you know, what's the best type of fragrance here in terms of concentration. But hopefully you found this video helpful, and if you did, of course you can always like and subscribe, and I make videos throughout the week, so don't forget about those.